What's up, Alex? Welcome back to the Low Carb Hustle, man. I'm so glad you're here.
Dude, it's great to be back. I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude. So you were on really early, kind of on in the Low Carb Hustle. Like I think in 2022, you came on. We were talking about mouth taping. It was a game changing episode for me personally. Like
Yeah.
I've been using mouth tape very consistently since then. I love it. I feel like it's absolutely changed the way I sleep, it changed the way I breathe, and it honestly has impacted my facial structure. Like if you look back, I've seen a difference
Yeah.
in like my cheekbones and my jaw and stuff. So very interesting. But for anyone who hasn't heard that episode or is not familiar with you and your work, can you just give us a little bit of brief background on who you are and how you came to be the mouth tape king?
You got it. Yeah. So my name is Alex. I'm the founder of Hostage Tape. I founded this company 2.5, 3 years ago. And, prior to this, I was a football player turned entrepreneur. I took my love of football and I created the software company out of it. And then had a wild journey, ups and downs that we all have, right, as entrepreneurs. And then it was at the tail end of that, then I discovered mouth taping, right? As I was going through this personal journey with my family and my wife, mouth taping, I discovered it and it completely changed my life because when I discovered it, I realized how transformational it was for me and was really about to become for me, that I realized there's something here that I can create. I can build a brand around this, inspire other men like you and everybody else listening to change their lives with this crazy simple little thing, called mouth tape. And now, 2.5, 3 years later, we're the official sleep aid partner of the UFC. We sponsor Joe Rogan. We're doing a lot of dollars in revenue, but more importantly, I mean, there's been over 100,000, probably almost 200,000 people now who have used our product. And most of them, when you go into the reviews, you see they all say there's really like three core things that everybody says. There's common themes. They'll say, "Oh, it works with my beard. It works with my facial hair," right? And you have a lot of facial hair
Thank you so
because
much for
most mouth
noticing.
tape doesn't, right? They'll say that it was life changing, right? Just absolutely life changing for them. And then also, it usually reduces, if not completely stops, snoring. And for a spouse who has to sit and deal with a husband who snores like a freight train, that's huge, man. Like the amount of wives who like are secretly just resentful because they can't sleep and their husbands sound so awful. It's an epidemic that's happening across this country that most people just don't know and most people don't talk about. So now we're here and got this amazing brand that's helping hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, man. And I get to go on podcasts like this and talk to great people like you and continue to spread the word, and we get to talk shop.
Dude, and it's so cool to see you guys absolutely killing it. I love to see the homies win. And I think that like the way you've positioned yourself, the branding, just the name of it called Hostage Tape. I just
Yeah.
think like you've done so many things well. And this is not your first entrepreneurial journey, right? You
Right.
were making tape for, was it for specifically for quarterbacks?
Well, so what the business was before this. So I don't think we dove into this last time. So let's
Mhm.
talk about it. It's really cool. So I was my first love was football, right? You can kind of see behind me. I've got all these jerseys here. So I was a quarterback. I played quarterback in high school, college, and then I went on and played arena football. So I wanted to be the next Kurt Warner. I wanted to make it into the NFL. And I think, are you in Arizona?
Yes, sir.
So you guys know Kurt Warner. You know who
Yeah.
Kurt Warner is,
Hometown
right?
hero. That's right.
And totally. And he was a hero of mine just because of the journey that he had, right? He had this true underdog story, probably one of the greatest Cinderella stories of all time, where if people don't know, Kurt Warner was this nobody coming out of college, right? He went to Northern Iowa, and
Big
Northern
football
Iowa was
school.
not a,
Everyone
what's that?
talks about it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Like just not a very big school at all. He didn't even start until his fifth year as a senior, right? Nobody thinks this guy's going to do anything, but he knows he's going to go on and play in the NFL and do something. And he has this core belief. And that resonated with me because I've always felt that way too, where I have this core belief and confidence in myself that nobody else knows, but I know. And so he went on and he ended up working in Hy-Vee because stuff just didn't really quite work out for him. So he's working in Hy-Vee, and then the founder of the Arena Football League comes and says, "Kurt, I want you to come play for me in the Arena Football League. It's this new startup league. It's going to be fun, crazy points, all sorts of stuff. And he didn't want to do it because he's like, this is a waste of my time. I belong in the NFL. But then he realized, well, I actually need to get tape. I need film. So I should probably do it. He does it, blows it up, right? Plays amazingly well, and then eventually ends up in the NFL, gets his shot. Trent Green goes down, goes in, becomes the starter for the St. Louis Rams, and then the rest is history. But it's this guy, this nobody dude who gets his shot that nobody believes, and he steps through the door and takes advantage of it. And so I wanted to do that, and didn't happen. I made it. I played arena football and did really well. I was a starter, was really successful, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. Life doesn't go the way you maybe want it to, so you have to be able to pivot. So I pivoted, and I used that experience as a player and as a coach, because I was also coaching football at the time. I used that experience to say, all right, how can we take this video that we're watching? Because when you're a football coach, a player, or even really in any sport, you watch a lot of film and you study your performance, what you did right, what you did wrong, and you also then scout your opponents. So you're looking at, what are they doing here? How are they doing this? So then you know how to attack them and what you're going to expect. And I took that experience and said, how can I make this experience better? How can we trade video more intelligently? And this was at a time when the internet was starting to explode and become something. So YouTube was starting to really become something. Like, nobody knew what YouTube was, and it's where you'd go on and you would spell it, YouTube, not the YouTube it is now, and Netflix was starting to become this thing. Wow, I can watch movies online. This is weird. And then that blew the internet up. So then I went, okay, we can take this experience of watching video, put it online, but then add a wrinkle to it. And so the wrinkle that I added was, how do I differentiate myself and actually solve a problem, right? A real problem. And the problem was, if you're a coach of a basketball team, okay, and how many coaches are on a basketball team? One, maybe two, like not very many, right? And so how do you take the video that's being filmed of the game and then actually break it down into pieces that you can use to teach your players? It's really hard to do because most coaches aren't video editors. They don't do that very well. They don't know what to do and how to do it. So if I could take that, solve that problem, and do it for them, so they could just wake up the next day and then pull out all their set plays every time they had a made basket, every time they had an inbounds play. Now they could get way more out of it and be more productive, win more games, right? Teach their players better. So that was what I pioneered, was using human intelligence, that if you played a game on a Friday night, you filmed it, you uploaded it to us, by the time you woke up the next day, every action in the game was broken down and statted. So then you're pulling all that stuff out the following morning, studying it, sending it to your players, learning from it. And so I pioneered that idea of using humans to do it. And then I ran it for 16 years, scaled it, and then I sold it to a company out of Tel Aviv, because at the time, the idea of what we were doing, right, this automated analytics, was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. But then the other piece was, how do you automate the filming of it, right? It's like going out there onto a court, a field, a pitch, right, a rink. Now it was, can we actually automate the filming of it too? And there were these companies that had cameras that were automatically filming the entire field and then using artificial intelligence in the camera to then make it look like it was panning and zooming and moving around. So I said, this is it. I need to either partner, get acquired by one of these companies, and then automate the whole process from start to finish, where literally a camera records the game automatically, it goes up into the cloud, and then by the time I wake up the next day, it's all done. So I, as a coach, literally don't have to touch or do a thing, and it's all ready. And that's now the era that we live in. That workflow has now happened, in part because of companies like us and kind of what we paved the way for. But coaches now have access to those kind of things, and it was really cool to be a part of it. but man, it was hard. It's hard running a software company and scaling those things. So
That's cool. So let me just ask you kind of from a mindset perspective. So between your athletic endeavors and your
yeah,
entrepreneurial journey, which I think always have like a lot of overlap,
yeah.
have you always believed about yourself that one day you're going to get a big break? Or did you more feel like if I just keep going, I'm going to eventually build up to the point where I'm going to be running like the business, have the career of my dreams?
Yeah. I
Did
think
you feel like just give me the shot, coach, put me in? Or it was like these little tiny activities that I do over and over and over and develop consistency and repetition around will eventually allow me to be successful or some
I think
variation?
I think we all we all have the mindset of like, coach, just give me that shot. Just give me the shot. Like we all have that in us, right? If we're sitting on the sidelines. And um but I think I always had this that I was working towards. It was something, some goal, some hope that I was always looking for that. And so when I was younger, it was I'm going to play college football. And that was it. And I was working to that. And then when I got to college, it was like, okay, I'm going to play pro football. And then I was working to that. Right. So it was every level, every stage of my life. I always found something that I was working towards. And that's probably the key there. I think too often in life, most people, the average person, doesn't actually set a goal or have a purpose in life to know this is where I want to go. This is what I'm working for. So then people feel hopeless, they feel purposeless, and they don't know what to do, and then they don't get started. And so now, now that I've transitioned from being an athlete, right? I then created my first business, and I thought I'm going to go here. I'm going to revolutionize this around the world and become this big company. And it took a long time, a hell of a lot longer than I had wanted it to, and failed a lot, right? You become a business owner, you fail a lot. And especially in your first business.
Yeah.
So
If you're not
failing,
thinking
all
about
the
driving
failing.
Uber like once a week, then, are you even a business owner?
So when I failed, I kept failing, and learning and getting better and better, right? It's just like in athletics, right? The only way you get better is by you fail and then you adjust and learn and then you try again. You fail, you adjust, learn, and you keep doing that. It's a cycle, right? So I think that was probably also part of the reason why as an athlete I'm such a good business person is because that daily grind of always doing what I need to do to keep working, keep getting better, fail and learn. That's being an athlete, right? If you're successful as an athlete and you
That's
get
just
to a high
ingrained in your
level,
DNA.
it's but 100% who we are, right? Being an entrepreneur is what a successful athlete is too. It's the same thing. It's all the same fundamentals.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm in the business world, when I finally then discovered this next chapter, so I closed that chapter of my life with the first business and sold it. And what's funny about that is it's kind of like, when you're an athlete and you retire, there's always a really difficult transition for an athlete to retire and then move into the next phase of their life because it's everything about who you were, it's your identity, and you just don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. You don't know how to be, and it's a difficult transition. So I had that. I didn't know how to be. I didn't know who to be. I didn't know what to be, even though I had this business that I was trying to grow and start and failing at. And so when I finally got through that and then discovered mouth taping and hostage tape, and then I evaluated the opportunity, I then set my next goal. And my next goal was this is going to be $1 billion brand. In
Hell yeah.
fact, well, the funnier story about that is I don't know if I told it on yours was so when I built the brand very early on, I'm very big with creating a P&L. You create all your numbers, you understand your numbers, you understand the roadmap, right? You got to know the map. You got to know where you're going. And that's a mistake most early entrepreneurs make. They don't understand the numbers and how to go from A to B. And so you map that out with a P&L over a 2-year period. And when I did that, I went, oh, because at first I'm like, we could be $100 million company. Yeah. And I went, no, I'm going to add a zero to it. We're going to be $1 billion company. And then that's my new goal. My new aspiration is I'm shooting for that $1 billion brand.
So the thing I'm really taking away from what you said there, like kind of across your whole career path and your journey, is number one, you have to have a goal. You have to have some sort of tangible metric for success that you're putting in your brain. I want to play in college. I want to play professionally. I want to be $1 billion brand. And then you have to develop a roadmap to get there, whether it's taking the reps, doing the like playing the games,
Yep.
whether building up the P&L. You have to know how to get there, because otherwise you're just going to be floundering. So I feel like if you can have a goal and have a roadmap to get there, then no matter what, you're going to be successful as long as you continue to take those reps and iterate on those.
Well, yeah. And I would actually, to dive into what you just said, you have to know how to get there. I would argue that we don't always know how to get there, right? But if we actually create a vision and at least something that says, I want to get from point A to point B. I don't know how I'm going to get to point B just yet, but I know that I've got this, I've got that, and I have to take it one step at a time. And too often, especially in the younger generation, they don't think they want to get to point B too fast. Too many people want to get to point B and understand I just have to go one step at a time. So sometimes it's a matter of just getting started, taking it one step at a time, 1 foot at a time, and starting and then figure it out as you go. Sometimes you got to do that, right?
So maybe
And you got
like
to
if
be
you want to go from
willing.
A to Z, you know how to get from A to B right now. You don't
Yeah.
know how to get from B to C or B to Z, but you can figure that out once you get there. Take those
Yeah,
steps. Ready, fire,
exactly.
aim.
And that's why a lot of people fail to start, is because they look at A to Z and go, I don't know how to get to Z, so I guess I'm just not going to do it. When in fact, just get to B. And then when you get to B, then get to C and so forth.
Yeah, that's great advice. Just no matter where you're at, whether your fitness goals, entrepreneurial goals, athletic goals,
Yeah.
that's very good. Let's talk about hostage tape, because I think that there's something super super special about what you've done here, even outside of the entrepreneurial journey and the brand you've built, which is amazing. Really reminds me of like Liquid Death water. I feel like you guys are on like the same wavelength there. You
Liquid
got it in
death,
front of you.
baby.
There you go. But mouth taping is something that is kind of emerging in popularity, and for good reason, because of the way that currently our society is suffering from reduced size in our airways, increased sleep apnea,
Hmm.
increased waistline and BMIs, increased the or decreased like ability to breathe nasally.
Hmm.
And so now we see more and more of almost like a regression and evolution in terms of our skull size, in terms of our nasal passages, because we're chewing food that is extremely soft and bioengineered to be ultra processed. We want to eat more of it. And we're mouth breathers now. So not only are we losing it from a food perspective, we're also losing it from a breathing perspective. And mouth tape, especially at night, is a great way to reinforce and rebuild some of that capacity. Can you just talk a little bit about how you came to discover kind of the magic of mouth taping and what that's done for your life?
Yeah. So before I do that, you know what's really wild too. So I work with a guy named Dr. Alfie. He's out of Houston, and he's probably the leading airway surgeon in the world. So when it comes to people who have issues with breathing, their jaws, sleeping, all that, people go see him in Houston, and then they get surgery done to fix, you know, a some sort of jaw that's like recessed or whatever it might be. Okay. And we were doing a podcast together, and I asked him the question. I said, well, Dr. Alfie, why do you think, as the leading airway surgeon in the world, why do you think we've regressed in Western society? And he said something that I never heard before that was fascinating. And because obviously what you alluded to was, yeah, we're not chewing hard foods anymore. What we eat, all that stuff, 100%. But he said that we're not breastfeeding as much
Really?
anymore. So basically, the theory is that there was some point, I think, in the it might have been in the 70s or whatever, where breastfeeding dramatically got like reduced because I think with the evolution of like baby formulas and all that
Mhm.
stuff, we started putting baby formula into kids' mouths. What happens is when they're not breastfeeding, right? It's way easier to drink the milk, the formula out of a bottle, and it's just easy. And we're not using anything. But when we're breastfeeding, we're actually really struggling, and we're forced to use our jaw, our tongue, everything around here much more. So it gets the babies off to a much better foundation of everything here that then sets them on a path for good posture of the tongue, the jaw, and how we breathe. So
Fascinating.
that was fascinating to me, which makes complete sense when you think about it, right? And then you kind of go, Mom, how long was I breastfed? Because I know for me, I was a mouth breather. I've been a mouth breather my whole life. And so I must not have breastfed very long at all. And because I was born in 1979. So I grew up in the thick of when formulas were becoming huge and shoved into babies' faces. So, so okay, to answer your question, how did I discover this? So I, um, I went through divorce, and I was, sleeping in a cold, dark basement, and I was living in my aunt's basement, and I had a just kind of one of those rock bottom moments. And so I'm sitting in my aunt's basement, right, alone, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, how did I get here? How did I get to this moment where I think I was 39, 40 years old at the time. How did I get here? How did I get to this point where I had this business, this big business that I built? I had my kids. I had everything. I thought I had everything. I felt like I was, I'd worked so hard to get to that point where my family was one of the most important things to me. And I was working so hard to try to build everything for my family. And then all of a sudden I lost all of it. So it's like I was working so hard for the one thing that I wanted to provide for. And then I lost the one thing that I was trying to provide for. And so in that moment, then I kind of made a decision where I thought, all right, what do I need to do as a man? How do I need to improve? It was the Jocko ultimate like accountability moment. I need to take ultimate accountability, extreme accountability for my life. And so I started looking into my health. I mean, I was an athlete my whole life, right? And my health had gotten out of control, and I just wasn't taking care of myself. I there was a point where when my wife were in the same house, she was sleeping in the separate bedroom for years because I snored like terribly. It was awful. I snored like a freight train. It was so bad that she was in the other bedroom, and then I would wake up and I would get dressed, and then my kids would have my wife would have gotten the kids ready and off to school, and then I would just go downstairs and go into my office, and I just always felt like crap, didn't feel good. I let myself go, and I gotten overweight, right? And so and the resentment builds, right? When you're going through that and you're not in the same bedroom together, and uh, there was just a lack of connection, and just all those things build and build and build and build and build and get out of control. And so I'm then sitting there in my aunt's basement thinking, okay, I'm going to start with my sleep. So then I pull the computer out, open up the browser, and I type in Amazon, like most of us do, and I go, how to stop snoring. And some of the results pull up like, there's the mouth guards, there's the pillows. And I thought, okay, well, mouth guard might be interesting. You see those marketed all over the place. So I ordered a mouth guard. Mouth guard comes, and you put it in a boiling water, you put it in your mouth, and you practically burn your gums in your mouth trying to do it. And it's real super. I remember being really uncomfortable, and it didn't fit my mouth very well, and I actually kept my mouth open like this. And I'm like, this can't be right, but I guess we'll try it. And so I went to bed that one night and it really hurt. But I remember waking up with like drool all over the side of my face down onto the pillow. And I'm like, I don't think this worked at all because I still felt like crap and my mouth was still wide open. But I didn't know it was a mouth breathing thing at the time. Right. So that didn't work. And me being the guy that I am, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole and go even further. And so this meant going past the first 2 pages of Google. I like literally went to like page 10 of Google, like further and further and further, next, to where I came across an article that was written by somebody where he told a story of going to Stanford Medical Center. And this gentleman was James Nestor, and he had written a best-selling book called Breath. And I never heard of this guy before. I'd never read this book before, but you see that it's a best-selling book. So, okay, this has got to be worth something. So I read the article. It was an excerpt from the book. And in this article, he explains this experiment where they go to Stanford Medical Center and they plug their nose for 10 days. Okay. And over those 10 days, they're only breathing through their mouth. So there's no nasal breathing. And so they're being monitored by the doctors and they're recording both medically, electronically, what's happening, as well as what they're experiencing anecdotally. And after those 10 days, like they were snoring so bad, they developed sleep apnea and their blood oxygen went through the floor. And they literally, it was awful with how they felt. And I could relate because I'm like, that's how I feel. So then after those 10 days, they unplugged their nose and they mouth taped to force nasal breathing. And when they did that, they mouth taped, everything went away. All of it. The snoring went away. Sleep apnea went away. And their blood oxygen levels went back to normal. All because of nasal breathing. And I can remember sitting there reading that, having this like epiphany going, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe what I was reading. I felt like I was Indiana Jones discovering like the Temple of Doom and like, oh my God, I found it. Like, what am I looking at here? And I couldn't believe that I'd never been told this before. I never learned it before. Like being an athlete, my coaches had never taught it to me before. So it was crazy. So I then went on and bought mouth tape. And at the time I didn't know what to get. You don't know what to use, what to get. So I bought just anything that I could find. And then when I got it and I put on mouth tape, I woke up the next day like a teenager. I could not believe how I felt the next day. And then that was the moment where I realized, oh my God, this is it, mouth taping. And I realized my life had changed in that moment. And then now I had an opportunity to do something with it.
That's amazing. And that experiment that he did where he plugged his nose for 10 days, it's crazy. Like it was like a 450% increase in snoring, like a 500% increase in like sleep apnea and like waking up and choking himself out. Like absolutely insane. So if you haven't read that book, Breath by James Nestor, and you want to dive down that rabbit hole, definitely worth the read.
Phenomenal. It's an easy read too. Really easy.
So I had an experience when I had hurt my back when in my late 20s and I was trying to figure it out, fix it. And I went to a physical therapist and they're basically like, you'll never fix your back until you fix your sleeping because you sleep on your stomach. It's always going to be put you in a bad position. So over the course of about 5.5 years, I was able to slowly transition from being a stomach sleeper to being a back sleeper. And it took a really, really long time, but it ended up being so worth it. My sleep got better. My back was feeling a lot better. And then I contrast that with the mouth taping because, the first couple of nights you're trying to sleep on your back, you wake up on your stomach, you flip back over. You're waking up all the time, you flip back over. I put on mouth tape for the first time and it was lights out, slept great and woke up with a ton of energy. It was almost like this magic pill where I was like, this is something that I've been missing my entire life, and I wouldn't have necessarily even thought like, oh, I'm a mouth breather, I need to solve this problem. But the data that I was seeing from my like biometric sleep tracking, my REM sleep went up by like 80%. My deep sleep increased by almost a full hour. It was like unreal. And it was such a simple fix. So yeah, I couldn't believe how radically that shifted my sleep without necessarily requiring prescription drugs or a surgery or anything along those lines. It was just like an instantaneous change to increase everything that I want, have more energy, more like better breath, waking up feeling a lot better. It's just incredible.
What's wild about that too is with how life changing of an experience that is that we've had, the amount of people who look at you and go, "That sounds like the dumbest thing ever." And it's like you have no idea, man. You have no idea. Now, granted, not everybody needs to mount tape. Most people do. I mean, the stats say it. Like, there's 128 million households in the U.S., and over 71% of people are mouth breathing at night. So, like, most of us do need to, but there's a handful of us that don't, right? And those people who even think it's crazy, it's wild how they think it's so stupid. But then when they experience it, they're like, oh my God. And then you can't help but not want to scream from the rooftops and tell everybody, like, how crazy this is and how life changing it is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you've not experienced this, 10 out of 10 would recommend. And the thing I love about hostage tape is that even for people who are like, oh, I'm a little bit like, what if I cough? What if I yawn? What if like my nose is plugged up? That hostage tape is so light and breathable. You can still breathe through your mouth. You can still
Yeah.
cough. You can still yawn. It's very stretchy, very flexible. So, I mean, beyond just the mouth taping, the product you developed like solves all the problems that people have experienced with mouth taping. Doesn't leave a bunch of residue on your mouth. You feel fine when you take it off in the morning. It doesn't pull my beard out, which is great. So talk to me a little bit about the nose strips now, because I've seen
Yeah.
that like you got those. I was actually able to I saw you at a event like last year, and I had not tried your nose strips until that point. And I tried them out, and they are the best in the game, hands down. They're just like, oh,
I
they
love
so much.
I
Yeah.
love that experience. Like, I remember that. It was burned into my brain because I had the same experience you did with a nose strip. So I'd never used a breathe right before. Like, breathe right's the elephant in the room, right? They're the uh the product that came out that really like created the nose strip. And I'd never used one. And so when my partner Ben, my business partner, he was like, we should do a nose strip. And I'm like, a nose strip? Like, what is that going to do? You know, because if you've never used one, you don't actually realize what's in it. You don't
Yeah.
realize that this isn't just a piece of tape. Okay. And because most people do who've never done it. So I didn't get what it was, what's in it, what it was really doing. And so when I went to the pharmacy and I bought some breathe rights, I put it on, I went, holy shit. Oh, whoa. I couldn't believe that I wasn't breathing normal out of my nose my whole life. Because for anybody that doesn't know, there is I don't have one other than on my nose. So there's plastic in the nose strip that creates flex. And so what it does is when you put it on your nose, it's now opening up my nostrils. It's increasing the airflow up through my nose. So I'm focusing on nasal breathing in everything that I'm doing when I'm not talking or eating. And then when I have this on, especially when I'm doing a workout or if I'm sleeping, where it's really important, it's so much easier to now get the breath through there when you've got this on. I can't do a run without wearing a nose strip now at all. And so when I discovered that for the first time, I went, oh boy, there's another opportunity here. So we said, how do we let's take this, let's redesign it, let's make it black, fit into the hostage tape theme, the brand. And now we're adding a ton of value to what we already do, right? We're encouraging nasal breathing. So now this helps people nasal breathe even better. And it also gives you the ability to use it during a workout. So it's not just during sleep.
And we can sit here and talk about how great it is all day long. But the fact is, until you try this out, you will not ever be able to understand fully what this feels like.
Yeah.
But it feels like I'm legitimately got 50% more air in. Like I just felt like I could fill my lungs easier. I just felt
Here's
way more energized. It was
yeah.
crazy.
Here's what for the average person listening or watching to this, what you could do right now is just take your fingers and kind of put it into your nostrils and then just kind of just lift it out. Okay. That's kind of how you feel when you have a nose strip on. And then you immediately go, whoa, okay, I get it. So try that. And then you'll understand.
And it doesn't feel like you have fingers in your nose either, which is a really
Right.
nice feature with the strips. But
There
like
are
the thing I
versions of that, by the way. There are some they're nasal dilators where they will go in your nose, which that drives me nuts. I don't particularly like those. Plus, I think having tape on my nose just makes me look badass.
I
So
mean, you do look badass. I was
I
going to
like
say
it.
it. I was going to say it earlier, but like, there's been a couple times when I've been a little bit sick, a little bit plugged up, and I'll put that on, and all of a sudden, like my breathing is completely restored too. So if
Yeah.
you're ever like, if you got like little kids at home and they're coming home and they like sneeze in your mouth, and all of a sudden now you've passing around some like cold for the next 4 weeks in your house, get some of these. It's going to make your life a lot better. Cause
Well,
like we were, good.
yeah, and let's actually. So here's a quick little thing about that most people don't know. So when you think about like, oh, my nose got stuffed up, whatever, I can't breathe out of my nose, so I have to mouth breathe. That's actually the problem. So what happens is when our nose gets stuffed up and we mouth breathe, our brain is sending a signal to our nose to create mucus. So then it plugs up and then we mouth breathe. So then it's this vicious cycle. So all we got to do is break the cycle. Okay. Keep our mouth shut, breathe through your nose. And then what happens is your nose naturally drains and starts to open up. Okay. Right. So your body was designed to breathe through the nose. So it will breathe through the nose. If you force it, you do it, you train it. Now, certainly if you have an allergy, that's something different. Okay. But even if you're sick, there's never been a time where I don't mouth tape at night, even if I'm sick and congested. Okay. Because I know that when I go to bed and I'm nasal breathing, my body will open up the nose and I will breathe just fine. And so when I wake up the next morning, it's bone dry. But then the moment I take the tape off and I start mouth breathing, my nose stuffs right back up. So
You gave me that advice last time we talked too. And I was like, what
yeah,
about if I'm plugged up? Should I still be mouth taping? And you're like, I've always found that it helps clear it up. So
totally.
I tried that out and it was amazing. Yeah. Cause my body was just like, all right, I guess we need to be able to breathe through this. And then same thing, wake up in the morning, pull that off. And all of a sudden it feels like there's like drainage into my sinuses where now I can't take a deep breath in anymore.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
fascinating. So like Alex, where can people follow you, catch up with you, see more of your stuff and hostage tape stuff?
Yeah. So you can find us on all the socials. Instagram's probably our biggest at hostage tape. Our YouTube channel is growing quite a bit now. You can see us hostagetape.com. You can see us on walmart.com, on Amazon. We're all over the place.
Hell yeah. That's amazing, man. So thank you so much for taking the time today to come and chat with us. This is fantastic. And honestly, like if anyone's out there listening and just wants to experiment with their sleep, wants to experiment with their breath, wants to have more energy, don't just like listen to this podcast and go, that sounds nice. Must be cool for you guys, but try this out. And like, even if you just have like a little piece of masking tape in your
Yeah.
house, throw it on your mouth at night. And you're not going to like how like how it feels compared to the hostage tape, but just get something going where you can actually experiment with this. It's literally one of the most game-changing, smallest pieces you can add into a fitness lifestyle that is going to really radically amplify your energy, your results, how you feel when you wake up. I can't recommend this stuff enough. So
Yeah. And if you're anything like the guy in Love is Blind, right, he was using scotch tape. Right. Speaking of which, we got mentioned on Love is Blind this last season here.
oh, nice.
So, so everybody's been talking about how we got talked about on like the biggest reality TV show ever. But that guy on there, he uses hostage tape when he's got facial hair, but then when he doesn't have facial hair, he just uses scotch tape. So if you've got scotch tape at home, just try some scotch tape and see how it works. You've got plenty of things you can try and use it and see how it goes. It's super easy because a lot of people think they go, well, if I'm snoring or I'm having this issue, I should just go get surgery. But here's the reality. All right. We're partnered with the largest ENT clinic in Southern California. Okay. Their head doctor, we've got videos of him talking about this. He'll say, look, going to get surgery is not the first thing you want to do because it's not covered by insurance and it's really painful. And a lot of times it doesn't solve the issue. So if you mouth tape, you got to mouth tape for the rest of your life. Is that really that bad? It's not. It's the easiest thing to do. And it can be one of the least expensive things you can do to solve that issue.
And completely non-invasive. Yeah,
Yeah.
like in that book Breath, he talks about how people have these nasal surgeries to help them breathe better and end up with like empty nose syndrome, where they're having to go back in later because they can't get a full breath. They're not filtering the air out, and they have to put new stuff back in that they took out doing some of these surgeries. And
Yeah.
that happened to like
Totally.
18% of the people that they were getting the surgeries. So,
Yep.
last
Totally, man.
question, and I know that neither of us are doctors, but if someone's like has sleep apnea,
Yeah.
try this or no?
So again, let's clarify. I'm not a doctor. I will say this though. We have a lot of, sleep apnea, it's a spectrum. Do you have like severe obstructive sleep apnea? And those people typically are like really overweight. So the really overweight people, I would say you probably need to wear a CPAP, because if you've got a lot of excess weight that's pushing down your airways, then just purely mouth breathing may not be, the issue. There might be more to it. But for the average person, I can't tell you how many guys I've met who are like our age and who are just normal dudes, not overweight, and they're wearing a CPAP, who they'll ditch the CPAP and just start mouth taping, and it solves all their issues because they're not overweight, and the overweightness isn't pushing down on the airways. It's just they're just mouth breathing. But I'll say this: if you're wearing a CPAP, great. You can use hostage tape to ensure the CPAP works better and keeps your mouth shut, so you're not getting the air blowing in and out. We've got a ton of people who use hostage tape with their CPAP so it works better. We also have a ton of people who ditch their CPAP because they're not overweight. And then they may have realized for themselves that they didn't really need a CPAP and they're just wearing hostage tape. So everybody's different.
Give it a shot, though. You're not going to know if you don't try.
Absolutely.
Alex, thanks for being here, man. This was a pleasure.
Don't let bad sleep hold you hostage.
Yes.